follows is an April 11th, 2020-21 session with psychoanalyst Michael Eigen, speaking on Rebirth, It's Been Around a Long Time, followed by commentary from Keri, Cohen, and Loray Daws. This Rebirth essay is the first chapter in Healing, Rebirth, and the Work of Michael Eigen, published by Routledge in March 2021, edited by myself, Ken Fuchsman, and Keri Cohen. There are 19 other papers on Eigen's contributions in this book, which is available from Routledge and other sellers. Dr. Eigen begins his talk by discussing this book.
The papers that were related to my work, and they're not just papers related to my work. The papers in this book are creative papers that give expression to original perceptions of the people who did it. So it's not just about my work, it's also people giving expression to what's in them to say and to share. I want to also mention that Keri Cohen gives an online seminar of my work, and also in conjunction with Robin Bagay, another seminar online on my work, and Robin also gives his own seminar, and he will be putting up, or has already begun putting up, some of his beginning remarks to the various seminars, which themselves are both educational and uplifting. Loray co-edited a book of papers on my work with Stephen Block some time ago called Living Moments, and he has edited a book on Masterson's papers, on my major analyst Henry Elkin's papers, which is terrific to see. All of Henry's work in one way or another is about rebirth. Is about rebirth and its vicissitudes, to use Freud's words. And I'll leave off what else Loray is doing. He's doing other books right now too. And mention Freud, who talked about, in his letters to Fleece, he said that my work is really like the ancient mystery cults. And the mystery cults, all the ancient mystery cults were about rebirth. So it's been around, as I say, it's been around for a long time. This sense of rebirth. It couldn't be at a better time now because it's springtime. Also associated with rebirth, and with T.S. Eliot, April is the cruelest month because things begin to grow again, and the pain of growth, as well as the joy of growth, is expressed all through the world. And in this particular springtime, the whole world is crying. The whole world is crying, not just from the pandemic. It is crying from the pandemic, a pandemic cry. But it's also a cry of bafflement, of bewilderment, of pain of life. I'm thinking that I'd like to mention a book from a long time ago. It may not be exactly appropriate, but there's so much resentment in the world for inequities of different kinds, and they're bubbling in all kinds of ways. I hope they don't bubble other important things out. But the book is by Max Scheler, and it was around the First World War, maybe. I don't remember when it was written, early. And it's called Resentment. It's a semi-religious book called Resentment, about the resentment that inequalities provoke among human beings and the different kinds of responses to them. And he sort of helped define our current situation from his own. So the world isn't only crying, it's also singing. The soul is singing, the soul is crying, and that's been going on since antiquity. Freud is marvelous. He captures need, desire, practicality, survival, ethics, and creativity. All of them are given expression in his work, and we need, in our current situation, as always, in face of our struggles, in face of our difficulties, in face of the vicissitudes. Let me turn my phone off because it's making noise. We need creativity, creativity of all sorts, political creativity. Ancient Greece actually emphasized this political creativity, even though it, in face of its failures. Political creativity, sensory creativity. Our very senses have creative functions and destructive functions. Sensory creativity, emotional creativity, all kinds of psychical and mental creativities. There's a soul hunger, there's a psyche hunger in our world, and it's important that other functions don't completely shut it out, because it can't be shut out. It keeps coming back. Now, last Sunday was a specifically heightened day, both the last day of Passover and Christ rising, the Spirit rising, the rebirth moment. Going through the Red Sea, going through the sea opens up, we go through the sea. We also learn to swim in the sea, hopefully. And the Spirit is lifted. The Spirit lifts, the Spirit rises. So it's a confluence that we go through every year, that it's been going on pre-antiquity, one way or another, this sense. I'm thinking of Harold Bloom's remarks on Hamlet and Lear. And Hamlet he saw as the ace intellectual searcher, the mental searcher, the mind searcher. He saw everything and he saw it was nothing. And he died thinking no one knows anything about anything. In some way, he was much more than that, but Harold Bloom sees that Shakespeare saw that Hamlet was afraid that his great seeing penetrated to the nothingness. Of course, Buddhism has made a heck of an amazing opening from nothing, from being nothing, as at the same time the Bible creates everything out of nothing. So nothing is a pretty strong thing, pretty creative element. And about Lear, he talks about Lear as in juxtaposition with Hamlet's intellect, as Lear is emotionality, almost pure feeling. Rage one moment, wonder another moment, bewilderment another moment, and love. His love for Cordelia as the expression, the symbol, the signifier of love in the world. Love in the world is as practically the only figure in the play that wasn't hating in some way. Maybe that's impossible, because maybe Freud had it right, that everything is ambivalent. It's all a mixture. In any case, he feels that Lear died bewildered, wondering what's going on here. And in his own way, Hamlet also, but seeing into the nothingness of things, and Lear, having felt the everythingness of things, is bewildered. So what is this? What is this? Well, let me read parts of this paper. You can find the whole thing in this wonderful book that Keri and Ken put together, that Ken and Keri put together. And I'll read some pages from the Rebirth paper. It's been a theme for me ever since I was a little boy. So I remember thinking as a little boy, why? And my grandma, I watched my grandparents, 3 out of the 4 of my grandparents die, and I watched. The only one I didn't watch was the one who died in the old world and never came over here. So I saw this all before I was 5, 4, 3, had all my reactions. And I was thinking maybe it's not so bad to die, because I got the idea, where was I all these billions of years, all the time before me, all the endless time before me? I didn't have any pain then. I don't remember it. There was no pain. So maybe death isn't so bad if all it is a painless thought. Of course, that Hamlet got scared and saying, well, maybe life goes on after death too in some way, and it's very painful. We don't know. Anyway, rebirth seems to be a part of daily life, dying and coming back, sleeping, waking. Moderni, Rabba Muna Sechwab. Thank you, thank you. Great is your faith. Great is your faith. And so it's been in my mind since I was a little boy that new things keep happening. My mother talked about growing pains, growing pains. Well, and as a kid, maybe you're aware of your physical pains growing, and you don't have words, you don't have a vocabulary for your soul pains. You haven't developed that yet. Aldous Huxley felt that we teach the wrong kinds of subjects, that we should have a subject on the psychology of a psychological education, not just a academic mental education, but an education with regard to how we're made up as human beings and our particular problems that we face, because they don't stop. They keep on growing and new dimensions keep opening. So let me read a little bit from the Rebirth paper, and we'll see. I'm not sure what time I'm supposed to stop, but we'll try to keep it on schedule. So rebirth is an amazing word in the English language, with reverberations of meaning, going back to antiquity and before. I don't know where I say it, but we're reborn all life long. We're reborn all life long. It doesn't stop. And like Winnicott saying at the moment of his death, he has a prayer, "Oh Lord, let me be alive when I die." And I've talked about the founder of Apple, Steve Jobs. Funny last name, right? Job. Hey, when he was dying, what did he say? He said, "Wow." He said, "Wow." So, hey, rebirth is an amazing word in the English language, with reverberations of meaning going back to antiquity and before. Ever since human beings left a trace on this earth, there's been concern with pain, birth. Remember all the goddesses, the birth goddesses in sculpture, early sculpture, all the birth goddesses, and rebirth, spiritual birth. That's what Freud was thinking of when he was thinking of the ancient antiquity, the ancient mystery cults, because one of them in ancient Greece was, you put the candidate, you put the searcher in a cave overnight, lock him up in the dark, or you put him with dead bodies, or you put him in a graveyard. Anyway, he's stuck there with himself and his fears and his scares and then in the morning, the ritual is you open up the cave like Jesus. You open up the cave and you see Apollo bringing the sun across the sky, and you get an eternal feeling. You get an eternal now. You get a feeling that the soul lives forever. That the soul lives forever. The soul is alive. An eternal now moment. So we have eternal now moments as part of our soul experience, and scared to death of, is this the last minute we're going to be here? And we have both. It's a wonderful binary. It's a wonderful binary that gives rise to creativity. My own exploration here is informal and associative, staying as close as I can to imaginative vision and everyday experience. So much of our life is imaginative vision. Look, I was talking the other week about two versions of truth that are warring with each other throughout the country here, maybe through the world. One version of truth, storming the Capitol, the Trump truth. And another version, so we have the people who stormed the Capitol, and seems to one group so delusional, their delusion, they had their own truth. They were going to war for their own truth. And I remember Pontius Pilate, when asked about truth, when Pontius Pilate was asked what's going on here with Jesus, and Pontius Pilate was baffled. I don't think it was a cynical remark. I think he was baffled. And he was a searcher in his own way, and he didn't know what was going on. He said, "What is truth? What is truth? What is truth?" Well, truth is real, but we don't know what it is. Could be this, could be that. People are fighting for truth. One side says your truth is delusional. The other truth says there's something wrong with your truth. So we are made of so many capacities, including a felt implicit sense. That was from Jean Gemlin, felt implicit sense. And I wrote about it in a book called A Felt Sense. Opening nuances of worlds that form part of and exceed transformational systems throughout the ages. All the transformational systems throughout the ages, including psychoanalysis. Freud considered psychoanalysis a transformational system in its own right. All of them are attempting to work with our pain, our suffering, our joy. Who are we? What do we do to each other? How do we handle our feelings? What kind of attitudes do we have towards life and towards each other? How do we get from here to there? How do we get from our selfishness and meanness and cruelty? How do we go beyond war? And so on. And so it hasn't stopped, and the work isn't going to stop, and it's not going to stop anytime soon, no matter what it looks like. They go on. I mentioned the difference between word and meaning as meanings of rebirth far precede the English word, a latecomer. The word rebirth, as far as I'm not a scholar, so I can't vouch for it, but in my research, as far as I can get, the word rebirth in English started between 1200 and 1600 CE. But these notions were in Sanskrit, and at least 1,000 years before the Common Era, probably earlier. Words are packed with meaning, and samsara in Buddhism, daily suffering, our everyday suffering. Freud's the malaise of everyday life for Freud. Words are packed. So samsara is often linked with change, wandering, world, and may have earlier meant war. The idea of war between capacities has been around for a very, very long time, since pre-antiquity. War in myself, the war within myself. The Greeks spoke about a war between elements, accounting for phenomena, and it is no accident that part of the Western literary canon begins with an erotic theft that spiked and spiced the Homeric war, an Athenian version of exile return. So the so-called Western canon begins with a war, an erotic theft. She's mine, you took her from me. Bang. And possessiveness, ownership, territoriality. And It could be for hunger, it could be for glory, it could be for vanity, it could be for possessiveness. It goes on. And it's no accident that Freud, a great reader of humanity, found in Eros a dramatic expression of war between tensions that wound and uplift. Some of the vocabulary that we inherit from ancient Greece bears, we should be thinking about it still more. The difference between agape and eros, two kinds of love. They have about 5 kinds of love, and they have 5 or 6 kinds of soul. I haven't counted Aristotle's souls in a while, but there's a whole bunch of them. And you can see it in Pierre de Chardin's work, The Phenomenon of Man. It's basically the Aristotle souls going towards the noosphere, a lovely theory of evolution from a Jesuit paleontologist, Chardin. So, what to do with the war between tensions of our being? Freud tells Fliess, I mentioned this already. Freud tells Fliess his work is akin to the ancient mysteries. The latter try to transcend change, war, our lower nature, and reorient our beings in its higher nature, changeless, blissful. Hence the term sublime, sublimation of drives and creative effort. Freud does not pretend a utopian solution. He is not utopian, ever. As he says, there's always more work, always more work, difficulties. In Gestalt psychology, it would be problem solving, problem creation. As he says in a recording near the end of his life, you could get it online, it's free online. I had heard it from NPAP meeting that Marie Coleman Nelson, who was then editor of the Psychoanalytic Review, put on in celebration of one of the review's anniversaries. The Psychoanalytic Review, by the way, is the oldest psychoanalytic review in this country. It's maybe one of the most, I think it was 1913 had its origins. So, wow. Anyway, she had a recording. She gave everybody a recording of Freud's voice. And now that recording of Freud was from a BBC talk. And now that recording is on the internet for free. You could Google it. Just Google Freud's recording of Freud's voice and it pops up. So he says at the very end, and the struggle is not yet over. It's still beginning. We never recover. He didn't say this is my summary. We never recover from being human. We never recover from being human. There are many ways to look at the transformational struggle Freud partly recontextualized. It's funny looking into a blank screen like this. It's kind of, So much philosophy reflects on qualities of our being that pull us in different directions. So much philosophy and psychology are partners. They're blood sisters and brothers, philosophy and psychology. So much philosophy reflects on qualities and literature. So much philosophy reflects on qualities of our being that pull us in different directions, whatever your language for it. All the transformational systems have language for this. Qualities of our beings that pull us in different directions. I'm going to speak also that they're co-nourishing. They pull us in different directions and are also co-nourishing. And blends, different directions and blends in with psychology's attempts at diagnosis, study, and remediation. All of the DSM descriptions, they're cool descriptions. I wouldn't, don't get too rigid, but they're all descriptions of organizations of our capacities that are actually there. so many of them are, and each of us has a good number of them, and not just one or two or three. It is easy to make a link between Socrates' depiction of himself as midwife and gadfly. It's what Socrates calls himself in the dialogues. I'm a midwife. I'm a gadfly. I give birth, and I prick. I stimulate. I bug you. I bug you. I'm a bug. I'm a bug, and I'm a midwife. So this is Socrates, and he sure as hell bugged ancient Greece. They want to kill the bug. They said, you're corrupting the morals of the young by your analyses of our falsehoods. You're seeing through our belief systems, and you're saying they aren't the truth. The truth is something else, even though you don't know what it is. But this is a belief system made up of an attitude and delusions and a way of seeing things, interpretation. And so he's a bug. He bugged the nation and gave birth. What was he giving birth to? He's giving birth to truth, to love of truth, to love of goodness, love of justice, love of mercy. Even though he didn't know what it was and couldn't say it and had to resort to myth to give it expression. He resorted to myth to give it expression, even though Plato said, writers are liars. We shouldn't take them as truth. At the same time, his protagonist in his literature said, I'm resorting to stories, to myth, to give expression to this sense that I have, that truth and goodness and mercy and justice are real, but I can't define them. But I can make up stories and give you a sense of what I mean. So for me, fiction is a great truth carrier. Fiction talks about emotional truth, gives expression to emotional truth. So midwife and gadfly. It's easy to link Socrates with today's therapists. So often Socrates comes to a place where fictions of living fall apart and the unknown begins. The unknown. At such a point, he may resort to myth, and again, no accident that Freud called aspects of his metapsychology his myth. Remember? Freud called his metapsychology my myth. My myth. Look what's in it. See what's in it for you. Make up your myth. What's your myth? Let's hear yours. We don't have to have our myths fight each other. Let's give expression to different parts of reality, the unknown reality that lives through us in so many different organizations. The virtue of creative waiting. Creative waiting. I see that waiting is so important. Right? Waiting in therapy, waiting in one's own life, waiting. I had so many different therapy encounters, but my major analyst when I was beginning as a therapist, when I was starting as a therapist, and I would ask this, should I do this or do that? What's going on? What's happening here? And my analyst said, when in doubt, wait it out. When in doubt, wait it out. Creative waiting. Stillness. Wait. See what happens. I think for some reason I'm thinking of Rilke now, who actually creates realities when he writes. He actually creates experiential realities as he is writing. His words create realities, emotional realities, real. So the virtue of creative waiting on the unknown, creative waiting on the unknown, creative waiting on the unknown. Remember, I like quoting Eddington. I think Keri pointed it out recently. Eddington saying something about the universe, something unknown is doing we don't know what. The virtue of creative waiting on the unknown can at times, because like in Ecclesiastes, is a time for quick action and a time for creative waiting. And we often don't know which is which. If a car is coming for you and you're standing in the middle of the road, get out of the way. You don't think about it, but just get out of the way. The virtue of creative waiting on the unknown can at times open possibilities closed by war. Okay, war in a way. This is not. A lot of what I say is everything that anyone says is not true because it's qualified by other things that they can't be saying then. So take it with for what it is, as a grain of salt. But war almost always is, and that means war in the family, fighting in the family, fighting for your life in the family, in the body politic, between groups, between nations. War is almost always some form of premature closure of possibilities, of dialogue, of another kind of interaction. What if the whole world stopped for a moment and just stopped fighting and got into a state of creative waiting on the unknown? On creative wait, just stop the fight, creative waiting on the unknown. Let's see what develops, what dimensions open. So the virtue of creative waiting on the unknown can at times open possibilities closed by war. I'd like to say war is almost always premature closure of growth possibilities, emotion. Of course, other growth happens from war. Everything, no matter what we do or how destructive we get, growth can come of it. The turn can come. Although William Blake depicted heaven as war between all voices of personality expressed to the maximum, Blake said, let all the voices speak to the maximum. Let there be war. Dialogical war, speaking in heaven. All voices in heaven, speaking maximally, and something creative happening from it. Although William Blake depicted heaven as war between all voices of personality, all voices within you, let them all speak. Don't decide, wait. Between all voices of personality expressed to the maximum. That's what you do if you're going to write about these voices. They're going to have their maximum moments. Each nourishing all. This amazing vision that Blake had about all the voices speaking maximally and nourishing all nourishing all. Extraordinary. That's why he called it heaven. It should only be. In this vision, it's a vision. In this vision, an evolutionary challenge is an evolutionary challenge. Boy, do we have them. Richard Dan, he's an evolutionist, a Jesuit evolutionist. Lovely inspiration. In such a way that we partner experience and it us. That is less a model of control or war than mutual nourishment, more a path than final result. So, as Buddha was, the story goes that Buddha's last talk to his searchers, his disciples, was, be a path unto yourself. Find your own. Or Joe Campbell talking about the Arthurian legends. The knights looking for the Grail, Holy Grail. He says, and each knight entered a different place in the forest and made their own path. Forest can accommodate all the paths. Well, if we keep on working at it. Co-nourishment. We assign so many circles of meaning to our experience, trying to express what cannot be pinned down. At the same time, managing to convey aspects of what touches us. Aspects of what touches us. On the one hand, rebirth has been associated. I'm going to take a lozenge here. On the one hand, rebirth has been associated with wandering, searching, world, cyclic, circuitous change. We have all kinds of representations of different ways that the world changes. Cycles, circles, goes on. We give an poetic expression to all the different change feelings we have for thousands of years. On the other, it means to convey something new. Ecclesiastes says nothing new under the sun. Well, us, but we're after the new life, new sense of being and possibility. And dimensions don't stop opening up. They don't. Closed is a change too. Closed is a state. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. William James draws on spiritual traditions to speak of being twice born. Born again of the Spirit. Rabbi Menachem Schneerson speaks of God creating the world anew each moment. Rabba Munasecha. Great is your faith. Great. God keeps creating the world anew each moment, hoping what? Hoping we do it a little better job. We don't kill each other. Which in psychological terms can refer to a sense of being born anew moment to moment. Can you find the place? Can you find the place? In the Seder, Hamakom, the place. God is called the place. Can you find the place where you are born anew each moment? It's really there. Oh, because I'm me, you're you, we're the same old, if you meet the Buddha on the path, slay him? No, I don't know. That was Larry, I think Kopp was someone in another seminar. I couldn't figure out who in Washington, D.C. had said that if you meet the Buddha on the word, slay him. But it was, I think, Sheldon Kopp. And you find the place where you are born anew each moment, even a little bit, a drop of new birth, a little drop, what Bateson called news of difference, not just repetition compulsion, not just the same old dream. What's the tiny drop of difference in it? Even the same old dream has something, is not the same old dream. I have this funny saying. Can you we can't step into the same river once. We can't find the tiny drop of difference. The tiny little river drop we can put a toe into. Perhaps one only means revival, a feeling of coming alive, renewal, reanimating, rejuvenating, awakening through sensation, feeling, vision. Sometimes you're feeling deader, then you feel more alive, you feel better, you feel worse, it goes on. Moods. Freud talked about moods as being so important in his creative life. Images of dying out in agony and coming alive in wonder and joy are part of an expressive sense of resurrection, a rhythm in the Psalms and the life of Jesus. I call it a rhythm of faith, dying out, coming through, opening, closing. One of the basic concerns of the British school was loss, discovery, death, birth of feeling. The loss of feeling. It was part of the writings after the war, or during and right after where so much feeling was lost because of trauma, traumatic loss of feeling to get through. And London and Paris analysts were talking about this loss of feeling, and writers, the existential writers, Camus. Death, birth of feeling, and growth of a more heightened sense of one's psychic reality. Balance, new beginning. New beginning, balance. Coming into life with loss as a background, dropping into loss with life as a background. Loss and life being twins. In therapy, in life in general, in therapy, a little can go a long way. Little changes. You don't have to be discouraged if you're not totally transformed. You don't need that. You don't need it. All right, so you have nice moments like that. Okay. But Suzuki, D.T. Suzuki, when questioned about, samsara and nirvana, making nirvana, Suzuki says that's an attitude towards samsara. That what nirvana is a state, can be a momentary state. Some people this, some people that. But he says it's more of a transcendent attitude, having a different kind of attitude towards samsara. More working attitude. Let's work with it. Let's play with it. Let's see what we can do with it, as well as what it does with us. So in therapy, a little can go a long way. I'm a believer in little drops make a difference. Little changes for the better can make profound differences in a life. We try to develop language for little changes that make a difference, then fight therapy wars over formulations and realities touch. All the therapy wars are still going on. This therapy, that therapy. And psychoanalysis was this analytic approach, that. Now it's, cognitive, behavioral, and psychoanalysis. It goes on and on and on. What on earth are these therapy wars? I mean, they're all touching little drops in the puddle, little bits in the drops in the bucket, in the sea. They're all ways. I met the founder of cognitive behavior therapy years ago at a party at Joanna Steichen's house. I found him very open, very nice. Really, I didn't see anything wrong with it at all. I don't. I guess it depends on the user. Everything depends on the user, on the quality of the feeling. All the therapies contribute at some point, in some way, to some person. I was thinking about, I said this. I learned when I went into the field, I thought, wow, psychoanalysts are as egocentric as everyone else. I thought I was getting into something that was a little less narcissistic. Oh, and now years later, I see most therapists that I've ever met, most students I've ever worked with, most supervisees I've ever had, this feeling that whatever our defects, we're trying to help. We really are trying to help. And as far as I can see, most therapists, I can't vouch for everybody, are doing good, are doing good for most people that they meet, doing some good. You gotta, we're just people, but it's not a bad field. A little can go a long way. Why all the therapy wars? So I see all the therapists in the world as one therapist. And so you have your choice. If this one isn't working for you, try another one and see. We're all coming. It's all one therapist with lots of parts, lots of capacities. We try to develop language for little changes that make a difference, then fight therapy wars over the formulations and realities touched. Are we learning to appreciate different therapy languages and approaches as we would different poets or composers, opening perceptions of ripples in emotional attitudinal pulls, shifting spectrums of affective attitudes? That is, can we grow in appreciation of the different therapy languages we have? Like, you're going to fight which is your favorite flower? I like this flower, you like that flower. I like this poet, you like that poet. Well, maybe this poet isn't for you. So and your poet, maybe my poet isn't for you and your poet isn't for me, but we at least have our poets. I've been reading and thinking about Freud over 60 years and appreciate him more today than ever. I'm worried. There's so many good wars being fought. People are fighting good wars. Yeah, there are good wars being fought. Gender, God knows what that they and people. I remember what they used to do to gay people years ago. My God, it's a horror. So there are good wars being fought for human rights on many Black Lives Matter. Human rights, yes, but beware of going overboard with rights, because more wars have been fought over being right than anything that I know about. Yeah. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. The bifurcation that happens. So I'm afraid of cultural amnesia becoming part of the culture wars. I think there's a positive aspect to it. Fight for human rights. We need that. And we have to watch out that doesn't lead to an amnesia. Like people talking about, why read Shakespeare now? An old dead white man. You gotta be kidding. There's a cultural amnesia that is not helpful at all. So I do appreciate, and I have, when I was young, I couldn't read Freud. I read Jung, and thank God I was helped by Jung. As I'm getting older, I appreciate Freud more. The conflicts between different capacities, the need to develop a co-nourishing sense of self. At the moment, I'm thinking about his conjunction of resistance and permeability. He talks about resistance, or from Martha Graham, contraction, and permeability. Elizabeth Sewell, even a stone is permeable. A double tendency that is part of our makeup. We need them both. We wouldn't have survived without them. To resist and to be permeable. A double tendency part of our makeup. For example, liquid and electrical images depicting flow of psychic energy together with fixity, repetition, blockage, inertia, entropy, enduring patterns for better and worse. Right? Both in Freud. Freud depicted libido as liquid, electrical, and he had images of blockage, So inertia, entropy, and he talked about all the different ways these tendencies interact or try to interact or fail to interact. It is, of course, a doubleness with many applications and forms. D.T. Suzuki, he was one of my heroes in my 20s, along with Martin Buber, the doubleness. D.T. Suzuki told of his failure to achieve enlightenment while sitting in Japan at his meditation center, no matter how strong his efforts. At some point, his teacher sent him to Chicago to help translate Buddhist sutras. He figures, well, if you can't be enlightened, at least you can be useful. His translation of the Lankavatara Sutra, my favorite sutra, was Jack Kerouac's was Diamond Sutra was his favorite, and I know that also the Heart Sutra is a big favorite too. All good, all good. Mine was the Lankavatara Sutra. And it can be found online. If you can't find it online, write to me and I'll give you the link. It's free. Suzuki's translation. The first one he translated. While reading, while doing something useful, while doing his task, his job, his work. Don't put down work. My God, work is therapy, can be therapy. It's an old saying, but I believe it's true. Find a work that's therapy for you, a good work, a work that your mind can sink into, that your nature is made for. You know, I'm working with, you know, I have had, I at the moment there's someone who comes and goes in my practice who is a software engineer. He loves the beauty of the, like a mathematician, loving the beauty of the work, loving to explore whether it's, you know, a problem that interests him. Okay. What are you good for? Bion used to say, what are you good for? What are you good for? What am I good for? What are you good for? What can we do? What can we do? What is it that we're given to do? What capacity? What capacity? What flower are you? Or weed? I like weeds. I don't know. Thank God. I had a thing for many years of worms. I love worms. Darwin's. Then Adam wrote a book. Adam Phillips wrote a book, Darwin's Worms. So someone else, other people notice. But something happened, a shift of attitude that makes a difference. Okay. Oh, so Suzuki's breakthrough, his Satori. But he was reading something, doing his work that he was assigned to be helpful in this universe in some way, a little bit. And what does he reads this phrase. He reads this phrase. An elbow does not bend outward. An elbow does not bend outward. Puff. So he got a Satori. You can't make yourself do what you're not made to do. But we try to push past that, and I'm afraid that war is one attempt to blow ourselves to pieces. To get past our resistance, to get past our contraction. No, I don't think so. Work with it. Work with it. Work with what you can do. All this fight about identities. This is my identity. This is my identity. So I've come to the saying, we are more than the sum of our identities. We are more and other than the sum of our identities. Sort of like the Gestalt. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I'd like to say that we are more and other than the sum of our identities. What can you do? Oh, while reading, so an elbow doesn't bend backwards, then outward. And in an unexpected moment, enlightenment was achieved. What kind of breakthrough can this be? And how much further mining and digesting will be necessary? But something happened. A shift of attitude. A shift of attitude. In graduate school, I got the emphasis on attitudes from Gestalt psychology. An attitude as a frame of reference for affect. And attitudes as a frame of reference for your experience. But it's been here before. Suzuki was talking about a shift of attitude before I went to graduate school. Something happened, a shift of attitude that makes a difference in the way life is experienced and lived. Cognitive psychology is talking about shift of attitude. Shift of attitude. Wow. It can go very deep. It can go very deep. Attitudinal, affective shifts. In coming through the whirlwind, I talked about, and psychotic core too, I think. I began talking about affect, the affective, how every affect has implicitly attitudes, and attitudes affects the attitudinal affective world. Bion touches a kind of parallel sequence when describing work with psychosis. He has this phrase: breaking up, break down, break through. One might add break in, break out. The work of psychic digestion, in this case metabolizing aspects of our madness, is never ending. Oh my God, how mad are we? How mad are we? Besides the fight between truths, the war between truths, God help us. What came out in the paper, Betty brought it to my wife brought it to my attention, that vaccines are being sold, certificates that you were vaccinated, that you got the COVID vaccine. Certificates are being sold on the internet. So you can buy a certificate on the internet and have it sent to you that you had been vaccinated, even though you weren't. And and the press people who are developing this are crooks or criminals, but they're not just crooks and criminals. They believe they're doing something that's good. They believe they're doing something good, helping people defy the authorities that are ensnaring, that are false, that are, misleading you, trying to, imprison your being. You can be a free person and not get vaccinated, and not get sick. And if you get sick, there'll be herd immunity. So there's a black market. So now some of the main sites that sold this apparently are shutting this down. So there'll be a black market. There'll be a black market on certificates now. Yes. Is it only materialistic to make money? Maybe for some, but for some it's a virtue. They see it as a virtue. They're doing good. Wow. What we do in the name of good. The work of psychic digestion, in this case metabolizing aspects of our madness, is never ending. Metabolizing aspects of our madness. An important question is, what kind of beginning and nurturing can it have? How can we begin? That's why I say, you can't step into the same river once. Well, let's see. Maybe we can step in the river once. That's cool. Let's step in the river once. It doesn't have to be the same. Can we begin? Well, we do begin. We never stop beginning. Beginning never stops. As the Talmud says, we are not required to finish the task, but we are asked, we're obliged to begin it. Go into the forest each night goes into space and makes its own path. We're obliged to begin it. To undertake the living and processing of our own existence. The living and processing of our own existence. This is something that the psychic world is contributing, the psychological world is contributing, the psycho-spiritual world is contributing. Taking the living and processing of our own existence. How much existence can we process? Not too much. But the quality of processing is important. Bion speaks of a back and forth movement between breaking apart, putting together. Back to square one. And what's the affective attitude he assigns to being back at square one, breaking apart? He assigns patience, patience, patience. Tolerating buildup of further reorganization. Back to square one again. Don't get trapped by your organizations, by your solutions. Okay, they're good for certain moments of experience, certain conditions. It keeps going. But I back to square one again. But I suspect how square one looks and feels and tastes changes with experience. It's not the same square one. I like to say now, it's never the same square one. Square one is always going to be a little different. A question is not just whether you can step into the same square one twice, but whether you can step into it once. How to begin, to begin, to begin. Can one reach a point where beginning becomes a new old friend? How are we doing for time? I'm not sure where I'm at. Anyone want to clue me in?
You've been speaking about an hour.
Oh, sure, I should stop then.
Okay, it's up to you.
Oh, it's up to me. It's up to me. Then no one else will have a chance. I want everyone to have a chance. All right, let me just finish this little piece. So a double tendency, let me see. Well, maybe I'll just stop here and see where we go. I've been speaking for, I didn't realize I was speaking for an hour. Okay. I'll just finish here. Well, I sort of said this already. Suzuki remarks that one crosses the river to nirvana. Samsara does not disappear. Life goes on in all its dimensions, but nirvana opens a different attitude towards samsara. Again, a little goes a long way. I'll just do one more paragraph and then we'll call it. In a seminar I attended with Bion in 1977, he spoke of a patient who, after 12 years, wanted to leave therapy because nothing had changed. He was just the same as when he started. Bion reported asking him, "Do you mind telling me how you did that?" He laconically remarked to the audience that knowing how change does not happen would be a contribution to science. Well, there is change and there is change. It certainly would be a mystery if one could stop change, since it is happening all the time. And yet, it is also the case we can feel and do something constant, ways we do not change. Irrevocable pain. Irrevocable pain that poisons a life. And for some, does life in. I think we'll just stop here, because because I would end up taking the whole time. So you can read the rest of this in Healing Rebirth book, filled with gems of all kinds from lots of people. Okay, Ken, you're the MC.
All right, here's the book again. We'll mention it again later. Right. The next section of this session is both Keri Cohen and Loray Daws will each speak for 10 minutes on Mike's work on Rebirth. Now, if you just want to see the two of them, go to the top of the screen where it says View Everyone, and then press Who's Talking, and that's who you'll see. Keri Cohen, as well as being co-editor of the Healing Rebirth and the Work of Michael Eigen book, is a licensed clinical social worker and a board-certified diplomat in clinical social work. She also, as Mike has mentioned, runs a group on Mike's work. She's a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania School of Social Policy, and she is a published writer, presented papers at national and international conferences, and is co-moderator of the International Online Studying Eigen group. And she's only been attending Eigen seminars on Tuesday for 15 years. Loray Daws has edited 2 books on Dr. Eigen and is working on another book, also all published, can be published by Routledge. He's a clinical psychologist in both South Africa and British Columbia, and he does these things on the same day. He is in private practice, and he is a senior faculty member at the International Masterson Institute for Psychoanalytic Psychotherapy in New York. It's a pleasure to have both of them talk. We'll start with Keri, and you have 10 minutes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Hold on, I just need to get my computer set. Okay. I wanted to thank you, Mike and Loray, for being here, and thank you to the Object Relations Institute and to Ken Fuchsman for organizing, moderating, and sponsoring this panel event. I feel grateful to be a part of it and a part of this moment with all of you. Mike Eigen's work is quite a nourishing gift to the soul, truly. His energy is from the cosmos, the universal ties, the music of the spheres. It's really hard to articulate the feeling one has when in the room with him, in a group or individually. It's like coming home in a way, coming home to an internal, spiritual, soulful place that welcomes all the feeling states. I want to thank Mike, too, for generously agreeing to present and share his Rebirth paper and his wisdom today with all of us. I first heard him present it at the 2019 International Psychohistorical Conference in New York. But hearing it again today, nearly 2 years later, in the midst of a pandemic where life and death and rebirth are quite literally in the foreground, takes on a different tone, texture, and context. Time and the timing seem to me an important context for this particular subject of rebirth. So Mike did speak for an hour. However, he was not able to talk about his entire paper. So I'm going to reference some sections and some things that he said that unfortunately he wasn't able to get to. Mike talks about, quote, the rise and fall of spirit, end quote, and says, quote, we swim in seas of pain. He then says, even so, we may, with the Zen master who falls off a cliff, spy a bunch of strawberries on the way down and murmur within our beings, ah, strawberries. Well, we certainly have fallen in many ways over the last year. It is important to murmur, ah, strawberries, as we fall. It's so important. This embodies part of a timeless presence of our human spirit as we or parts of our beings die off and are reborn. Mike seems to see the strawberries in every fall, in every type of fall. At the beginning of the pandemic, he intuitively remarked that there would be a lot of creativity in the midst of the time period, and we see he certainly was correct. I'd like to mention briefly a little bit about Pavel Florensky, a Russian philosopher and priest who lived in the last century. Christos Sideris introduced me to him recently. I believe he's here today. In 1919, Pavel Florensky wrote, quote, "The past has not passed away, but is eternally preserved somewhere or other and continues to be real and really influential." He continues, "Everybody and everything is so closely interwoven that separation is only approximate, with continuous transition taking place from one part of the whole to another part." I'm going to read it one more time. "The past has not passed away, but is eternally preserved somewhere or other and continues to be real and really influential. Everybody and everything is so closely interwoven that separation is only approximate, with continuous transition taking place from one part of the whole to another part." This quote is from an article talking about the decline and eventual death of someone's friend. In it, the author not only bore witness to the death process, but the experience helped him understand quite literally how birth and rebirth blended into himself and his friend as his friend faced death. His friend quite literally became part of him, his being, his soul, as he witnessed his death. In Mike's Rebirth paper, he speaks about, quote, ways life feeds on death, as well as the reverse. I liked the witnessing discussion in the article, which is too much to discuss in this short time frame, but I thought, in a way, death springs eternal. There is a saying in English that hope springs eternal, but I feel death springs eternal too. Here, death springs eternal as one enfolds into the other. We live in the other, dead or alive. It's kind of like the physicist David Bohm's implicate and explicate order. Mike references David Bohm in his writings. Implicate order, to fold inward. Explicate order, to unfold. The whole enfolds into the whole in life as well. This isn't just physically with science or atoms, but mentally, psychically too. Everything is connected to everything else in the universe, an unbroken wholeness. David Bohm felt a mystical universe and did not believe that particles and matter were separate. Music of the spheres ties in with this in that there is a long history of sound and order going back to the Greeks and the Romans. Music of the sun, the moon, and the planets, and how they moved and related to one another produced a harmony, an order, a hum based on their orbits. Boethius, a Roman scholar, wrote about this and also spoke about an internal music in the body. And as we know, Mike is very, very musical. Today, we know from science that many of these theories were on track, even on a cellular level. Everything is connected, and living and dying is one rhythm, one movement. In another context, death springs eternal. For example, when Mike taught, well, he didn't get to talk about it, but in his Rebirth paper, he talks about Bion's line in Memoir of the Future, when Big Sister says, "I am someone you have forgotten." He talks about this in many different ways. But there is one thing that is interesting, is that we forget in order to live. We forget in order to be reborn, partially. One aspect that enables us to be reborn or start anew, albeit in a partial way, is transcending ourselves. Mike brings this out eloquently throughout his work and this paper. He not only brings this out, but he truly lives it. He models this for us in so many ways. He writes, "We are bigger than many moments." One piece that is so important to meditate on is what he calls creative writing, outlasting ourselves, outlasting whatever moment or series of moments that may feel like they will lead to a permanent death. We must outlast those moments. Time and how we use it is so important. And as we meditate and creatively wait, we can take in the metaphorical strawberries, the memory, the smell, the texture, sight, magnificent act of nature that creates the strawberries and feelings associated with strawberry memories. Of course, this is metaphorical, so however we see the strawberries in our life, we take them in many, many ways. Yes, we may forget the past in order to live or reborn, but we are also born as we fall and are eternally whole at the same time, simultaneously. The past is not the past. Death really can spring eternal if we learn how to play for time, allow partial birth, and transcend ourselves moment to moment. Conscious living has its tensions. Mike states at the end of his Rebirth paper, is it harder to live or die? Which has greater complexity? And I feel in a way both. Mike advocates embracing every complex moment, no matter what. Let's keep Rabbi Schneerson's words close to our hearts. And I'm summarizing that at every moment, with every breath, one is born anew, strawberries and all. Thank you.
Thank you, Keri. And now, Loray.
Dr. Eigen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. A special thank you to Dr. Fuchsman and Ms. Cohen for an excellent edited book wherein Dr. Eigen's artful paper can be found, as well as the International Psychohistorical Association and the Object Relation Institute for supporting and co-sponsoring this event. With so many others, I remain in awe of Dr. Eigen's writing and message concerning not only our psyche's autochthonous abilities and strivings, but his keen understanding of our collective archetypal heritage. Reading and listening to Dr. Eigen's various interlocutors spanning over millennia and across many disciplines, we are indeed fortunate to have a contemporary clinician, scholar, and psychoanalytic elder able to hold for us a rich tapestry of archetypal images and hope concerning our rebirth capacity. For me, since 1973, in a groundbreaking article entitled Abstinence and the Schizoid Ego, we find Dr. Eigen's unique psychoanalytic feel, his sensitive reinterpretation of so-called regression, as compared to Winnicott's incommunicado core and Guntrop's rather passive ego, as a form of needed indwelling to creative waiting for rebirth. Eigen's feel can undoubtedly be read in tandem with the great Carl Jung's approach to regeneration, as found in the archetypes and the collective unconscious. Here we read the initial spark of Eigen's decades-long description of various symbolism concerning rebirth and resurrection, images of self in becoming, our inherent Hippocratic need, if not Orphic spark. Before Hippocrates, or the god of silence, all healing needs to hold its energy to allow and hear the sensitive self's inner voice for transformation. More contemporary speaking, Dr. Eigen writes, throughout our lives, we are pregnant with our lives, pregnant with unborn selves and psychic babies, including thoughts, feelings, attitudes, modes of experiencing, a pregnancy that never stops, no matter how many birth. Gestation does not end. In 2018. Listening to Dr. Eigen, I was also reminded of an autobiography Dr. Eigen invites his reader to study, entitled The Words to Say It, an autobiographical novel by Marie Cardinal that was published in 1983. As I opened the book with much excitement, the dedication read as follows: "To the doctor who helped me be born." A patient recently, similar to the patient described by Dr. Eigen in his 1973 article, and with a lot of breadcrumbs through the current article, struggling with loss and alcohol use, reflected on the following: "Loray, painful as this is, even the fact that I feel thrust into a situation not of my making, I want to work through this pain, but in a different way. I want to come through in a different way. I'm now talking, to my surprise, about spirituality with those close to me. I think I never fully understood it. I'm not talking about religion, but rather to my rational side that wants to control everything, especially what I feel. Getting into what I feel deep within me, even with the people close to me. One would think I could talk to them about this, but I don't. I'm aware that I am, that we are, when it comes to emotions, but babies in that world, in the larval stage. To move beyond the larval stage, I must also become quiet and honest with myself. A kind of prayer, if that makes sense, like Saul on the road to Damascus, to give over to something higher in myself." Reflecting further on the current article of Eigen that accompanies Rebirth, his rhythm of faith, his writing on toxic nourishment and damaged bonds, I would like to read another dream I entitled St. John of the Cross, the Resurrection Principle and Falling Up, graciously provided by a very creative and deeply psychologically engaged analysant. She said the following, and I hope some of this one can see Dr. Eigen's article come alive. "I dream, as before, of being chased, hiding, fearful. Just as those persecuting me capture me, I start to fly. No, not fly, as it is not a complete ascension, just gaining height. It takes some effort, I have to work at it. Elevation, no longer in the grasp, but there are also limits to this height. And the space is not wide enough to come through. On either side there's wiring. If I bump up against the wiring, it sparks and hurts. Here we can think of Freud and energy. The sparks are like ions, positive and negative, and they are charged. Something forms around me. I'm cocooned like a chrysalis. A tall ladder below me, a man on the top. He's like a first responder to help me. He breaks an opening in the cocoon. It cracks open. Feel he touches my feet and pulls me out. This encapsulation, this chrysalis, he knows to do it slowly. What formed around my body, enveloped, this cocoon, similar to the wires. It is from the same electrical ions. I'm getting shocked. It's such a visceral dream, the feel. Electrical charges. Being was being charged, not speak. A handling move, to be cared for, achieved for the greater good. Someone also tried to feed me. I could not chew yet. I wake up. An important dream. I'm afraid not to remember it. She associates. Like my previous dreams of wearing a hazmat suit as a child, a cocoon, breaking free. It reminds me of other dreams, getting through portals, a birth canal. I had to look up positive and negative ions, what it means in nature, and when it's man-made, it's usually toxic. A balance is always needed, balance in the air. It also reminds me of a butterfly, the last stage of being an adult, to escape and be transformed after being cocooned. Internal transformation, nor run away per se anymore. It is not so much external or physical changes. It's internal. Other thoughts. Is this representative of me too? Those parts that help or persecute me? I know they're actually me too. They are all parts not fully transformed. I know that I usually transform in difficult times, never when things go well. New awareness comes with difficulty, through difficulty. I'm suddenly thinking of St. John of the Cross and the resurrection principle, or Richard Rohr, the book entitled Falling Up. Like dreams, goodness, rise, fall, down, they go together, rise and fall like breathing. I've been hit many times in my life and I picked myself up. When I woke up, that feeling, that electric feeling, was so real I can still feel it. It's not comfortable, but vibrating newness. So much possibility, like a reverie? No, reverence. Dreams are like medicine to the soul. Still I'm present. I also wonder about neurobiology here. That electricity made me think of it. Ignition, ignited, activated and awakened, giving birth to the new. We associate the drawing that represents both neurological wiring and the tree of life, a wiring diagram, how we are soul wired for rebirth. The analyst said the following: to give birth, I also want to put pen to paper, not just be on the side. I said, giving birth to the self as the energy flows, using your own mind and creativity. As I said this, I could hear Eigen as an internal co-visor and background present. Can you find the place? You are born anew each moment. Perhaps one only means revival, a feeling of coming alive and renewal, reanimating, rejuvenating, awakening through sensation, feeling and vision, images of dying out in agony and coming alive in wonder and joy. With this coming alive, I would like to end with a quote of Henry Miller, the American writer, that echoes Eigen's sensibility. He writes, "Every day we slaughter our finest impulses. That is why we get heartache when we read those lines written by the hand of a master and recognize them as our own. And the tender shoots which we stifle because we lack the faith to believe in our own powers, our own criteria of truth and beauty. Every man, when he gets quiet, when he becomes desperately honest to himself, is capable of uttering profound truths. We all derive from the same source. There is no mystery about the origin of things. We are all part of creations, all poets, all musicians. We only have to open up, only to discover what is really there. And that to me is Eigen's birth-rebirth rhythm." Thank you.
Thank you, Loray. And thank you again, Keri. So our next section is that the two panelists and Mike have an exchange. So Mike is back on. Everybody's back on who needs to be. Mike, what comments do you have for Keri and Loray? And then the three of you can have a conversation for 15, 20 minutes if you so wish.
It's going to be too long for me. I think we're scheduled to end it in 5 minutes, right?
But yes, we are, but it's not a capital crime if we go over, if that's okay with you.
For a little while, but not.
Okay. When you're ready to end, we'll end.
I don't know, Ken. In any case, I love the comments. They're papers, and they should be published. Wonderful feelings and wonderful thoughts. Yeah, but for the couple of minutes I have left here, I'd like to add something to something I said earlier that I left out when I was talking about Hamlet's wondering if anything is real and true, and Lear wondering, being bewildered by it all, was an interview I saw on TV when I was thinking about these things. It was of a nun whose name I don't know, a nun who's done a lot of social work, a lot of social justice work. And it was an interview on WSNBC by Larry O'Donnell. And it was the nun's face that I'm thinking of. It goes along with what both Loray and Keri were talking about. But it was the face itself of this nun rather than anything she said or didn't say. And of course, her life speaks for itself. But it was her voice and her face in which I felt something way deeper and more, even more real, if that can be true. And I wouldn't vouch for it. But something for me that vibrated deep inside, that was deeper than Hamlet's doubts and Lear's bewilderment. It was her smile, her voice, that seemed to be an affirmation that came through all the doubts and all the bewilderment. A moment of affirmation that kept on that kept on coming back. A moment of affirmation that kept on coming back through the doubt and bewilderment, and as I felt growing throughout her life. She's now an elder, and you could see on her face that the spirit, this human spirit with the spark of the divine is deep. Have all the bewilderment, have all of Hamlet's thinking and all of Lear's feeling, and there's something further, something deeper, something more beautiful that runs through this beauty and this agony. The other thing I want to talk about is very simple. It was a moment I had yesterday or the day before, peeling an orange. And most oranges you can peel with moderate difficulty, but ease. This orange was very hard to peel, very hard to peel. And it dawned on me as I was peeling the orange that there must be an easier way. There must be some point of less resistance in the orange, some place that didn't harden around the fruit in such a way that you couldn't take it off. And so I began to look for the weak spot, the spot that wasn't, that was left, that if you could find this lack of strength, this weaker spot, just begin the peeling, that it would work. So I found the easy spot. I looked around the orange. I missed it a couple of times, and then there it was, the easy spot. So I began peeling at the easy place, the part that I could peel, the part that where the resistance wasn't so much that it would. I think that's a model for a lot of things: is finding the spot that you can work with rather than the spot that you can't. And that's about it for me. And I want to thank you. I think it was a terrific thing that you did, Ken. And I loved what the people were saying. And I guess you could put this online, and or they should be writing papers.
Mike, I want to thank you with all my heart for agreeing to do this and agreeing to give this paper originally at the Psychohistory Conference a couple of years ago. And Loray and Keri, you have done great work here. And if you look on the chat, you'll see how many people say wonderful things about you. And I want to thank everybody who has attended for being here today. I'm going to be sending some follow-up information to you. And again, thanks again. And of course, always to thank Dr. Ina Rosensfit for helping make this a reality. So have a great day to everybody, and thanks again. I hope you enjoyed this session. If you wish to read Dr. Eigen's complete Rebirth essay, it is available in Healing, Rebirth, and the Work of Michael Eigen, and is available from the publisher Routledge and a variety of online sellers. Thank you again, and have a good day.